Sometimes truth really is stranger than fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And today's deep dive, well, let's just say it's one of those stories that makes you wonder how you could ever make this stuff up. We're talking family secrets, betrayal, and a double murder that stayed hidden for years.
Yeah, this one's got it all.
So get ready because things are about to get complicated. Okay, so picture this. A quiet street in Essex, UK. Seems normal enough, right? And in this ordinary place lived Virginia McCullough. Seemed like an average woman to her neighbors, but in 2023, Virginia was arrested. And that's when everything went sideways. Turns out her parents, John and Lois, weren't off on some extended vacation like everyone thought. No, their bodies were found in their own home.
Wow.
And here's a kicker. They've been there for 4 years. 4 years. I mean, how do you even begin to hide something like that?
It's incredible how a carefully constructed facade can fool everyone around you. The sources describe the McCulloughs as a pretty private family, but not particularly unusual for the neighborhood. Like, even local shopkeepers mention Virginia acting a bit strange sometimes.
Oh, really? Like what?
Things like seeming nervous, flustered, but nothing that screamed, "Hey, I've hidden my parents' bodies in the house." It's not like she was a total recluse, completely shut off from the world.
Right.
It was the ordinariness of it all that helped her maintain the illusion for so long.
Wild, isn't it?
Absolutely wild. It's like something out of a movie.
Right.
So, according to all the reports, Virginia created this whole elaborate lie, telling everyone her parents had retired to the coast, even went as far as forging letters from them,
Really?
letters about their fake adventures, and get this, she even pretended to be pregnant at one point.
Oh, wow.
It's like she was layering the deception, making it more believable. Because seriously, who would make up something that outlandish?
I mean, it makes you wonder what was going on in her head, right? Was this just a desperate attempt to buy time? Or was she trying to create a story, a reality that she could almost believe herself? A way to distance herself from what she had done?
It's chilling. It is, especially when you consider the forged documents, the made-up stories. It all points to someone very deliberately constructing and maintaining a false reality.
Okay, now that's just creepy.
Yeah.
So we've got this daughter living what appears to be a normal life while harboring this incredibly dark secret.
Right.
But the big question is, why?
Yeah.
Why go through all that effort to keep up this charade for years?
Well, if you look at the financial records, things get pretty interesting. It seems Virginia had been taking money from her parents for years, racked up a significant amount of debt.
No kidding.
And not only that, she forged her father's signature on financial documents. And then, after their deaths, she started using their pensions and assets for herself, ultimately pocketing nearly £150,000.
So this wasn't just about keeping up appearances. It sounds like cold, calculated financial gain was a huge motivator in this twisted scheme.
Exactly. And, it's interesting how she actually spent the money, because we're not talking about like fancy cars or lavish vacations here.
Oh, really?
No, a big chunk of it went straight to online gambling. Yeah, and that detail, I think, adds another layer to this whole thing. It suggests an element of impulsivity, a recklessness that doesn't quite fit with this image of a master manipulator,
Yeah, it's almost like a missing puzzle piece or something, right?
Right.
This gambling thing, it kind of throws a wrench into the whole thing. How do you reconcile that impulsiveness with the meticulous planning it took to keep this facade going for years?
Exactly. It's hard to pin down. And I think that complexity is what makes this case so fascinating. It doesn't fit neatly into any box. But let's back up for a second, talk about how the truth finally came out. So it's September 2023. Seems like a normal day when a concerned GP reaches out to the police.
Okay.
The doctor had noticed all these missed appointments for John, and it just felt strange to them,
Yeah.
Something was off.
I bet the police weren't prepared for what they found when they got there.
Right.
Can you imagine showing up at the house and Virginia just casually answers the door, acting like everything's completely normal?
Well, thankfully they had body cameras that day because the footage is chilling. When they confront her about her parents, Virginia is totally calm, like eerily composed.
Oh, wow.
There's even a moment caught on camera where she says to the officers, "Cheer up, at least you've caught the bad guy." Gives you chills just thinking about it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, talk about a creepy thing to say in that situation.
Yeah.
But how do you stay that calm when the jig is up?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Was it some kind of bizarre defense mechanism? Was she trying to convince herself it wasn't real? The human mind is a strange and powerful thing, and in cases like this, it's hard to know what's truly going on in there.
It really is.
Yeah.
So they arrest Virginia. And I have to imagine this is where the investigation takes that really dark turn when they finally see what's inside the house.
Yeah.
So what did they find?
It was a scene straight out of a nightmare. They found John's body in what used to be his study,
Okay.
concealed, and I mean really concealed, like entombed within this makeshift structure he built. Yeah. Masonry blocks, blankets, paintings. It was a carefully thought out hiding place. I mean, that level of effort just speaks to the premeditation involved, you know? It's
Right.
disturbing.
Oh my gosh, it's not just hiding a body. It's almost like ritualistic or something.
Right.
And what about Lois? Where was she?
Equally horrific. They found her body upstairs, hidden inside a wardrobe, wrapped in a sleeping bag.
Oh no.
And the methods used were brutal. Poisoning, of course, which we talked about. But with Lois, there were also multiple stab wounds.
That is just horrifying.
Mhm.
It's one thing to hear about crimes like this in the abstract, just the facts, but then to actually think about the physical acts, the violence, it's really hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, it really makes you think about it, doesn't it? And to think all this time she's putting on this act, pretending everything's normal, makes you wonder, like, what about those shopkeepers, those neighbors? Did no one, have any suspicions at all? Well, after the bodies were found, everyone was totally shocked, just completely blindsided. The neighbors, they described the McCulls as quiet, kept to themselves, but no one ever imagined anything like this was happening.
Right.
And even the people who interacted with Virginia pretty regularly, they had no clue. It really just goes to show you how easily we can be fooled, even by people we think we know.
It's a scary thought
Yeah.
that anyone, even someone who seems totally normal, could be capable of something so awful.
Yeah.
But this case, it's not just about this one woman and the horrible things she did.
Right.
It makes you think about some really uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we live in.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
this case really highlights how vulnerable a lot of older folks are, especially those living alone. John and Lois were pretty isolated, and that made it way easier for their daughter to control what people knew and manipulate everyone around her.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder how many other people might be out there suffering in silence, hidden from view, with no one to help them.
And it's not just about being physically isolated, right? It's about financial abuse, manipulation, that breakdown of trust that can happen even in families. It's a harsh reminder that abuse takes many forms, and sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones closest to us.
Exactly. This whole thing, it's a wake-up call. We need to be more aware of the signs of abuse and manipulation. Look out for each other, especially those who are the most vulnerable.
I completely agree. We need to pay attention, ask questions if something feels off, trust our gut instincts.
Yeah.
Because sometimes just shining a light on these dark situations, bringing them out into the open, can be the most powerful weapon we have.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.